Welcome back, everybody, to Cheddar Politics. I'm Baker Bajano. One of the most closely watched Senate races this November will be in the Show Me state of Missouri. Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill will face a tough competition in a largely conservative state, as 11 Republicans are vying for the party's nomination to take her on, including our next guest. We're pleased to be joined by Austin Peterson. He's a Senate candidate from Missouri. Austin, great to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us. You've actually come under a lot of fire recently for giving away a machine that 3D prints untraceable guns. You've actually even stated, quote, "There is no tragedy great enough that justifies taking away guns from innocent people." So explain a little bit of that to us. Explain why you decided you wanted to take this route in terms of printing these guns off.
Sure. Just so everybody understands, there's a big difference between a 3D printer and a milling machine. I'm actually giving away a milling machine. It's made by the same company that makes these 3D printers. But what's interesting about this debate is we're not actually having a debate about the Second Amendment, because a milling machine is a very common piece of hardware that people use all the time. What we're having a debate over is the First Amendment, because the company DefenseDistributed just won a big legal battle that made it so that they could distribute the blueprints and the software that are required in order to manufacture a firearm. That's always been legal. What's controversial is that you can manufacture a firearm that doesn't contain a serial number, but that has always been the case. It's always been legal. People make guns in their mills at their own homes all of the time. This is just something that sounds scary because the machine's called a Ghost Gunner 2.
Okay, and I also want to switch gears and let's talk about the First Amendment on some things, because Alex Jones, of course, recently was just banned on Facebook for hate speech. You've actually been banned by Facebook in the past as well for raffling an AR-15. What do you make about the role that Facebook is playing in First Amendment rights cases right now?
Well, I believe that they have, they're private companies, so they have the right to police their platform as they please. Quite frankly, the terms of service when I got banned were not entirely clear. You could not sell a firearm, but you were allowed to give one away. We were banned twice for giving away AR-15s. But I think the fact of the matter is that when it comes to a public sphere, right, we need to have free speech, but that these corporations should have the authority to be able to set their own terms, and I respect that and I agree with that, right? The First Amendment applies to government censorship. But I do think that there is, in general, a big push towards blotting out and stamping out opinions that you don't agree with. That exists on both sides. There's political correctness from the left, but we also have patriotic correctness from the right. How we as a country move forward is we're going to have to reach across the aisle, have an open mind, put our confirmation biases aside, think outside the box, and support the ideas of free speech. I may disagree with what you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. That's the principle that we need to hold to.
Right, and so just to clarify, do you agree with Facebook's stance of banning Alex Jones from the platform?
I do not agree with that stance. I think that it's better because if you disagree with ideas, we should have them out in the public sphere so that we can debate them. You know, I don't agree with the propagation of conspiracy theories, and I think that a lot of what Alex Jones says needs to be double checked by some fact checkers. But you know, he's really even said it himself. He's more of an entertainer than he is a journalist or a news reporter. But you know, again, it's something that I think is endemic to our culture. I think part of the reason why Alex Jones exists is simply because people don't trust the mainstream media and they don't trust the news networks because they feel that they're pushing a biased agenda. So people seek out into alternative news outlets in order to, maybe sometimes they want to confirm their own biases, right? Sometimes maybe the mainstream media gets it right. But having more voices in the debate, not fewer, is what I advocate for. And let's have your ideas out in the public sphere. Let's debate them and let's determine who's right or who's wrong and judge it on individual merit.
A lot of people might be familiar to your name because you ran as a Libertarian presidential candidate back in 2016. You fell short of getting that nomination because Gary Johnson got it, but now you're running as a Republican in Missouri. Why did you decide to canvass and go as a Republican? Why not stay as a Libertarian?
Well, my supporters, I made actually over 40,000 personal phone calls, and out of 4,000 of those calls, my supporters said, you're pro-life, you're pro-liberty, you're a constitutionalist, you should run as a Republican to beat Claire because that's our best shot. And you know what? I'm actually the only Republican in Missouri who, in a head-to-head poll, beats Claire McCaskill by double digits, 16 points. My nearest competitor, Josh Hawley, is neck and neck with her in the polls. Most of the voters around Missouri, and I've been to every gas station and every Lincoln Day event here in the state of Missouri in the last year, they're ABC voters, anybody but Claire. They just want the strongest Republican to beat her in the general. But because I was a Libertarian, it shows that I bring a lot of those crossover votes. In 2012, the Libertarians actually got 6% of the vote. I'm the only Republican who can bring those votes in. And even some Democrats cross over to vote for me in this matchup between me and Claire McCaskill. She's the least popular member of Congress, so you should be blowing her out of the water because Trump won by 19 points in Missouri. But the plain fact is that right now the establishment candidate, the Mitch McConnell pick in this race that I'm running against right now, it almost feels like the Republican establishment would rather make peace with 6 more years of Claire McCaskill than have to deal with somebody who, like myself, who will be a thorn in the side of the establishment Republicans when they want to raise spending or raise taxes or centrally plan our economy just the same way the Democrats do. I'm a true constitutional conservative, a real Republican, small r, and I fight for everybody's freedom. That's why I beat Claire by double digits and nobody else can.
All right, I want to ask you about Claire McCaskill. A lot of people say she's got an uphill climb to keep her Senate seat. It's essentially a toss-up by most political prognosticators. But there's a lot of reports right now that the Russians have been targeting Claire McCaskill and her campaign. What's your opinion on this? And do you emphatically denounce any sort of foreign adversary from meddling in the election in Missouri?
I do, and I'll say the same thing that Reagan said at the time, trust but verify when it comes to Claire McCaskill and her claims of being hacked. I don't want to automatically just believe that. What's interesting is that just 3 days ago, Claire McCaskill's super PAC actually launched an attack against our campaign, claiming that because I accept Bitcoin for my campaign, I must be in collusion with the Russians, because Bitcoin is obviously a universal, international currency that is being used by mostly techies at the time, but is gaining broader acceptance. But I think that the Russian narrative right now has infected the Democratic Party so much that I wouldn't hesitate to use the term Russophobes. I absolutely condemn interference in elections, whether it's done by foreign governments or whether it's done by our own government. My diplomacy and international policy is one of true liberalism in the sense of limited government and non-interventionism, which kind of sets me apart from many Republicans. I don't want foreigners messing in our elections, but frankly, if you want to talk about collusion and interference, the Republican Party is openly funding my primary opponent. They changed the rules to do so. They're doing to me what Hillary Clinton did to Bernie Sanders. You know, it's funny that we try and spread democracy overseas, and yet we don't seem to enjoy much of it here at home.
All right, Austin Peterson, he is the Senate candidate from Missouri. Sir, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much. All right, coming up, everybody, on Cheddar Politics, we're going to go inside the campaign to take down the Democratic field in 2020. What does that opposition research look like? We'll explain next.